guys, welcome back to another video. I apologize for not doing a video sooner. I was in my garden all summer and I took a little time off from doing videos, but I'm back now. And fall's right around the corner. It got me in the mood for painting pumpkins. So I'm going to show you a couple different varieties today. I'm going to show you a creamy pumpkin, a green pumpkin, and a traditional orange pumpkin. All done in watercolors. So let's get started. Okay, so since it's almost fall, I thought maybe we would paint some pumpkins today. I started with some little samples last night just to practice a little bit before I showed you. So I'm going to do a couple different pumpkins. I really love the white ones, the creamy color pumpkins. Those are my favorite. But I'm going to also show you a traditional pumpkin, and I might even throw in there like a green pumpkin as well. So let's see. So I've got my Arches watercolor paper, and I've got my my Winsor Newton watercolors, and I've got my Grumbacher brushes, a size 12 and a size 10, and I've got my water and my paper towel. Okay, so when you're doing white, let me just show you. When you're doing white, there's still a undertone of a certain color. So I'm gonna do this like creamy color just so you see it, because your paper is white, and obviously white on white you're not gonna see. So you always have to do, even if it's a white flower or whatever, you always have to do an undertone of some other color, whether it be a gray or a cream or a blue. So in this case, I'm gonna do a creamy color. So I'm gonna show you how to achieve that. So we're gonna do the white one first. All right, so I am going to wet my paints, and I am using, out of my palette here, I think I'm gonna be using, this is Cadmium Red and Cadmium, I think it's called Red. Yeah, is this the red one? Yeah, Cadmium Red, and then this is the Cadmium Red Pale. Then this is Cadmium Yellow, this is SAP Green, and this is Burnt Umber. So I'm gonna be using pretty much those colors right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically 5 colors. I might throw in something else a little later, but basically 5 colors for now. All right, so I am going to get my pale red wet here, and I have a little bit in my palette already, so I'm gonna re-wet it. And then I'm just gonna tone that down with a little bit of my my burnt umber, just so it's not so vibrant. And I'm gonna get a nice wash here. So it's like a really, really light, muted orange. Okay. So I didn't draw anything first. If you want to draw it first, you can definitely do that. I am not going to. Pumpkins are pretty easy, for me at least, and so I'm not going to draw it. But you could always draw it first if you want to. And if you do draw it nice and lightly so that you can erase your pencil marks later. All right, so I am going to start, and I hope you can see this because it's a really light wash. And I'm going to just kind of do a little bit. I hate to do outlines of my whatever I'm painting, my flowers, my pumpkins, trees, whatever, but so just kind of go over it with some water on the edges here like this, so it kind of blends out a little bit. And you can leave some white space so that your pumpkin has some highlights. There. And I really like these, I mean, I know that pumpkins come in all different shapes and sizes, but I really like the big flat ones. They're kind of squishy. So I'm gonna do one of those first. So, as you can see, it's a really light, muted orange, and then I've left some highlights in the middle. You don't have to do your pumpkin this shape. You could just do the traditional big, tall, round pumpkin. But I'm gonna give it a little bit of character here. Okay, so as I'm waiting for that, well, no, actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw in a little bit more of that color, just in certain areas. Because you know where the stem comes out, it's gonna be a little bit darker there. It's gonna have a shadow, and then obviously the bottom's gonna be shadowed because it's gonna be sitting on something, whether it's the ground or a table. Okay. So I am gonna throw in a little bit of my burnt umber, and I'm gonna let it bleed a little bit right there. And then I'm gonna just put in my stem, and you could do any kind of stems you want. You could do a tall one, a short one, a fat one, a skinny one. So, and here again, I'm going to leave a little bit of my highlights. Okay. And we'll come in and darken that later. We just kind of want that for right now. And I'm just going to throw in a little bit down here as well. All right. That's good. Okay, so that's a good start. We're going to let that dry a little bit, and we're going to go on to our orange pumpkin. So here again, I'm going to use just the same mix that I had done. It's the pale cadmium red, and with a little bit of burnt umber just to dull it down a little bit. And I will put that one right here. Okay. And then I'll do a different shape for this one. I'll do more of your traditional big pumpkin. And here again, I'm just using a light wash. You can always darken it later. And I'm going to start filling it in. Like I said before, I don't like to outline my stuff because then it leaves kind of this ring around it. But if you just start blending it in right away with the water, it'll soften that edge up for you. So then that way you don't have a harsh edge. Okay, so since this one's going to be an orange pumpkin, I am going to go ahead and just put in some of my darker colors already. All right, so here again, right around your stem, it's going to be a little bit darker. Down on the bottom, you're going to have your shadow, so you can throw that in there too. And just let it bleed with your pale orange. And you can alter your little, your shape here of your pumpkin. If it doesn't look right to you, you can always change that up. Okay. And as you're painting, start thinking about where your light source is coming from, whether it be a lamp or the sun or the moon. Start thinking about where your light source is coming from. And then that way you can leave some highlights on one side and a little bit more shadowing on the other side. So you can start thinking about that about now. Obviously my light source is going to come from the right, because I'm going to leave this side a little bit lighter. I'm going to throw in a little bit more of this darker and let it bleed in there a little bit. Okay. All right, and then pumpkins have those lines, you know, those nice round lines that make all the grooves in the pumpkin. So you want to start thinking about that as well. So where my highlights are, I kind of curve them to kind of mimic the lines, the grooves of the pumpkin. All right, so let's see here. I think I'm going to throw in a little bit of this cadmium yellow, just to give it a little bit of a yellow. It's nice when whatever you're painting, whether it be a floral or whatever, it's nice when you put in a lot of different colors, not just one color. It gives it a little bit more interest. Otherwise, it's a little boring when it's just one color, in my opinion. You like to mix it. And then again with the grooves, even though you know you're going to leave one side a little bit more highlighted. All right, let's go back to our first one and let that one dry just a little bit. Oh, you know what? We didn't do our little stem. Here, let's do our stem really quick. I'm going to put in more of a greenish stem. So I'm going to use my SAP Green. Let's see here. And I am going to dull it down with a little bit of my burnt umber. There you go. Just to get that vibrancy of the green out of there. I'm going to bleed it into my pumpkin a little bit, kind of where the stem is. And then I'm going to come up with my stem. I'm going to do my stem going a different way. And then your stem is a little bit thicker on the bottom, so you can thicken it up on the bottom and then leave some highlights again. It'll give it that look of a rough look, because the stems usually are very, very rough. Okay. And actually, I'm going to throw in a little green on this side of my pumpkin as well. This is the shadowed side of my pumpkin. And I'm going to shadow it up a little bit with some green. Okay. All right, so let's let that one dry for now. Okay, let's go back to our first one. Wash off our brush really good. We don't want green in our pumpkin. All right, so it kind of had this little bleed here, as you can see. I'm gonna try and see if I can soften that up. But we're gonna put many other layers on here anyways. No, it's not working. It dried too much, but that's okay because we are going to, this is just the first layer. So let's do, let me get this out so you can see. So again, it's our burnt umber and our pale orange that we're dulling down a little bit. And on this one too, I'm gonna have my light source come from the right. So, and these are just samples. I am not making some kind of masterpiece here. These are just samples just to show you how to do it. So I'm gonna have probably pumpkins just a little bit everywhere on my page. So just so you know, it's not gonna be a finished painting. These are just samples for you. Okay, so I'm kind of mimicking my grooves again. We can darken that up a little bit if we want to. And if you think that you darkened it up a little too much, what you could do is with a dry, clean brush, you can go over it like this and just mop up that paint that you just put down. And then clean off your brush. And if you want to do it again, you can do it again. Okay. So I've got a really light my burnt umber, very light. But here, now I'm gonna go a little bit darker where the stem is, and it's bleeding out. I'm not sure I want all that bleed, so I might just mop some of that up. I'm gonna judge it when it's done bleeding. And again, leave some. Yeah, that's a little too much bleed for me, so I'm gonna mop some of that up. And you can even, if that's not working out, you could even take your paper towel and you could just dab it. Okay. And smooth it back out. I don't know if you can hear that, but one of my dogs is snoring in the background. So I apologize for that. All right. Keep my little grooves going there. Okay. All right. I'm going to throw in a little bit of my SAP Green, I think. Right where the stem is, just to throw in a little bit of green. Make it a little bit more interesting. Okay. All right, that's the next layer. So let's let that dry, and we are going to go on to our next pumpkin. So let's go back to this one. And I think I'm gonna, let's see, is it dry? It's still very damp, but it's not too damp. So I'm gonna put in my orange again, my pale cadmium red, and I'm gonna start darkening up some of my areas. And since my paper is still damp, it's bleeding in nicely. And you can go as vibrant as you want. You can make a nice orange pumpkin. And remember, even though the whole pumpkin is orange, you want one side a little bit darker than the other, just to show dimension and where your light source is coming from. And you can leave in some of your grooves a little bit if you want. I wouldn't leave in that many grooves that it's very predictable. You just kind of want a little bit here and there. Okay, so we are going to darken up this side a little bit, even though it's the highlighted side. And you can give your pumpkin as many grooves as you want. And then that's too predictable for me, so I'm going to blend it in a little bit. Okay. And I think I'm going to throw in a little bit more of that cadmium yellow right around here. And you can throw in as many colors as you want. Pumpkins, they have a lot of different shades of orange and reds and greens, and once that dries, it's going to look a little different anyways, because paint looks, as it dries, it starts getting a little bit more muted, obviously. So let's work on our stem again. So again, it is the SAP Green, and I did not dull down the SAP Green this time, so you can see it's a little bit more vibrant. You can always dull it down with its complementary color, so with an orange or a red. Or you can use, like I was using before, the burnt umber. And I will throw in a little bit more burnt umber in there too. Okay. Good. All right. So let's see here. I think I want to mute down a little bit of my highlights on the dark side. So I'm going to pull in just a little bit of my color just to dull that down a little bit, because I don't want too much white. So my brush is not that wet. I'm just pulling in some of my wet paint that's already on my painting, and I'm bringing it up. Oops, I splatted there. I've got a little bit too much water on my brush, but that's okay. All right. And let's put in a little bit more orange on this side too. All right, it's getting there. Let's go back to the first one. You know what, let's start a green one, so then that way it kind of dries a little bit. Okay, so let's just do SAP Green and burnt umber, because we don't want it to be a vibrant pumpkin. We want it just to be a muted down green. So again, you could put your orange in there if you want to. I'll throw a little orange in there just to show you, and it mutes it down a little bit. Turns into like a brown when you add the complementary color. But I don't want it that brown, so let's add a little bit more green. All right, that's better. Okay, so let's do a green pumpkin up on this side, just to show you. So it's a nice light green again. And I think I want to do a flat pumpkin again, kind of like this guy. I really like those flat pumpkins. And again, I don't like when I outline anything, so just add a little bit of water to bleed it out, just so you don't have your harsh edge. And you can start making some of your grooves. You're gonna blend in those anyway, so they don't have to be perfect. I really like those pumpkins with all the big bumps on them. Those are the best pumpkins. A lot of people think they're ugly, but they have so much character. All right, so let's go and darken our, you could leave some highlights again, but this is our darker side. I don't know, for some reason when I do a painting, I always make the lighter side on the right. I don't know what that means, but that's what I do. And you can alter the the shape again of your pumpkin if it's not right. I'm gonna throw in a little bit more green up here where the stem is gonna be, and a little bit darker down on the bottom. Okay, and I'll put in a little bit more on this side too. Now, I'm gonna throw in a little bit of orange just to give it a little bit more interest. So I'm gonna throw in a little bit of my Cadmium Red, the pale one. And just, you could just blot it here or there. I like the pumpkins that have a little bit of color everywhere, not just one color. And then of course on your lighter side, you can start getting rid of some of that white. Too much highlight is not a good thing either. All right, so I think we're gonna let that one dry right now. Oh wait, I forgot the stem again, just like I forgot on the last one. Okay, this one I think I'm gonna give a brown stem. So I'm gonna let it bleed into my pumpkin a little bit, and then I'm gonna bring it up. And I know at the beginning I said I was gonna use 2 brushes, but it seems like I'm using my number 12 for all of it. So I'm just going in with light touch, just so the tip of my brush is touching. Now this one might bleed a little bit too much, but because my pumpkin was really wet. But we'll see how much. And then I'm gonna dab a little bit down on the bottom too, just to give it a little bit of shadow down here. So that was my burnt umber. Okay, all right. I'm gonna go back to my creamy pumpkin. It's kind of dry. All right, so I'm going to use my burnt umber, and I'm gonna give him some like little spots down on the bottom. And I will crispen up the shadow down here. Just like he's got little dots. I love pumpkins that have dots and bumps. Okay, so I'm gonna start bleeding some of those little dots together because I don't want them too perfect. All right. And then even if you have a nice hard edge down here, kind of get rid of that. Just bleed it in a little bit, blend it out. I don't like really hard edges like that. And then with just some water, you can dab upward. Okay, I'm gonna crispen up my stem a little bit now too. All right. Again with the burnt umber, just the point of my brush, barely wet. It's more like dry brushing. When you want to get more detail, don't have that much water on your brush. Then you can really get in there with some detail. And then you're almost using the paint as if it was acrylic, even though it's not, it's watercolor. All right. I think I am going to blend out some of these for my grooves. All right. And if it's a little too harsh, take a nice clean brush, damp, and just go over them a little bit. And you can blend them out as much as you want. And you can really make your pumpkin have a lot of grooves if you want. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do that with this one. All right, I'm going to put in a little bit more of my SAP Green into the stem, just to change it up a little bit, add a little different color. And then I'm also going to, and you're probably going to want to use a smaller brush for this, but again, I'm just going to use my point, and I'm going to give a couple little curly cues, kind of like the little vines. You can make them brown, you can make them green, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to put a few in like this. And if you don't feel comfortable using your size 12 doing that, definitely go to a smaller brush. All right, I'm gonna let that dry. That one's looking pretty good. So see how even though it's a creamy white pumpkin, it's got the undertones of the oranges and the browns, because you need that. Otherwise, I mean, it's not gonna work. Your paper's white and you're not gonna see it. There. And you can darken it up if you want to. If you think that it needs a little bit crisper or more, you know, more grooves, you can definitely do that. I'm gonna go back to my orange pumpkin here. And I am going, this is still really wet, I could tell. It's got a lot of shine. When it's still really, really shiny, it means it is wet. But I'm gonna throw in some more of my Cad Red, especially on this side. And see how it's blending nicely? I teach classes here out of my home, and one of my students asked me yesterday what my favorite subject is to paint, and I have to say it's florals. I just love flowers. I love growing flowers, I love taking pictures of flowers and then using them as reference. So every spring I can't wait to like plant my seeds and see what comes up. And then I'll take pictures of them. And then in the winter time, when it's dark and gray outside, I just look at my flowers and I paint them, and it reminds me of what my garden looked like. Okay, I'm gonna try and get rid of some of these grooves a little bit here. I'm going to bring in a little bit more. Just try and break it up a little bit. And then what I think I'm gonna do is when this dries, I'm gonna bring in some of my burnt umber and put in some grooves again. But at this point, let's do our stem. Let's do another layer. And I think I'm going to want to pull in a little bit of green down on the bottom of the pumpkin as well. I'll bring some of my grooves up. Let that dry. That way it shows that there's shadowing on the bottom of the pumpkin. You could have done this with your burnt umber as well. I chose green. I chose my SAP Green. All right. Let's let that one dry because that one is really wet. It's got a lot of paint on it. Okay, we're gonna go back to our green one. Okay, so we're gonna put a little bit more our mixture on here, and I'm gonna give it another layer. And again, I'm trying to keep my grooves. As you can see, I've got some highlights in there. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of that burnt umber down on the bottom. Oop, maybe a little too much, but that's okay. Let's see how it bleeds, and if I don't like it, I'll mop it up. Sometimes pumpkins have, you know, the dirt on the bottom of them anyways. They're a little bit dirty before you wash them, so I might not mind that. And actually, I am not minding that. Okay. Darken up my stem a little bit. I'm hoping my pumpkin, yeah, it's a little bit damp still, so it's bleeding in a little bit, which I love. All right. And those turned out a little bit too dark, so I'm gonna mop them up with a clean brush, dab it off on my paper towel. Okay, that looks good. All right, I'm gonna put a little bit of green in the stem also. Alright, since this one is really wet, I'm going to add the little vines. I might have to, normally I would just let this air dry, but since I'm filming, I might use the heat gun to dry it. Or you can use a blow dryer. I think the heat gun works a little bit better. Alright, put a little bit more brown down here. It's still too wet to do those grooves, but I'll see if I can pull them up a little bit. Maybe. Yeah, it's pretty good. I guess I didn't need to try it. I was afraid that it was gonna bleed all over my pumpkin. All right. So, let's go over my green pumpkin again. All right. So I'm gonna take my SAP Green again and a little bit of my burnt umber. And my pumpkin is still damp, but let's go over it again. That one looks pretty good too. All right, so I'm gonna add the little vines on this one as well. So let's see, I chose brown, I chose green. I think I'm gonna do brown on this one too. So. And then you know what I forgot to bring out was my Payne's Gray. I normally add a little bit of Payne's Gray just to deepen things up a little bit. So I didn't bring that out right today. I'm not sure where it is. I don't want to look for it right now. But what I would do is I would take a little bit of Payne's Gray and I would dab a little bit of Payne's Gray right on the rim of the stems and then maybe even a little bit underneath just to deepen up those shadows a little bit. So, but I think those pumpkins look really good. When this one dries, and actually this one too, I might give it a little bit more of those spots. I like when there's character. So let's just give a little bit more spots to this one. Still a little damp on the bottom, which is good because then it's gonna bleed a little bit. You don't want to cover your whole pumpkin, but maybe just the bottom. All right, that one looks good. And you know what? This one's still really wet, but let's see what happens. I think maybe we can put in a couple spots down on this one too. Yeah, it's really wet, so it's really bleeding in together. So if you want that polka dot look, you're gonna have to wait till it dries. But you know what? I've got my heat gun somewhere. Where did I put my heat gun? Maybe I will dry it for you just really quick. There it is. Okay, and when you're doing the heat gun, just make sure you're not too close. Make sure you're not too close or you're gonna burn your paper. I'm gonna put this on low. Okay, so my pumpkin is pretty dry. I mean, it's still a little bit damp to the touch, but it's okay. All right, so I am going to throw in some of the burnt umber again, down on the bottom. And one of my dogs is having a little coughing fit right now, so if you hear that in the background, I apologize again. Okay. All right, so it's dry enough to do my burnt umber. I really want those little spots, and before my pumpkin was just too dry or too wet that they were all bleeding into each other, and I don't want that. I wanted some little spots. That looks so cute. I love it. Okay, I think I want to do the same thing to this little orange one here. So again, burnt umber. I want to crispen up my little lines here. All right. And then I'm going to come down with some of the grooves. So this is a little bit more of a dry brush look. It's not really bleeding. I mean, my paper is a little damp, but not too damp. I just wanted to crispen up those lines a little bit. And then you can pull them down a little bit if you want. With a clean brush, pull them down. There. Yeah, I like that. All right. Yeah, I really like that. Okay, the green one doesn't look finished to me. So I'm gonna pull in a little bit more of that burnt umber and maybe do some more streaks, some more grooves like I just did on that one. All right, that looks good. I'm gonna pull in a little bit more of my SAP Green. Just a little bit more vibrant. And I'm going to blend that in a little bit. Okay. And I think I'm going to give it a little bit more of that mix of the sap green and the brown. I want to just deepen up that side a little bit, my shadowed side. So I'm going to kind of tap it where the grooves would be. And then if it's too predictable for you, just break up that line a little bit. And I'm going to bring a little bit more of that light green on this side too. Really pretty. Okay, so as I was saying before, if I had my Payne's gray or even a little bit of black, I would probably just deepen up the areas here just a little bit, maybe even bring a little bit on the stem just to crispen up and make it look a little bit more rough, and maybe just add a little bit on the bottom here. But other than that, there's my pumpkins. I think they turned out pretty good. So I showed you a creamy color, an orange, and a green. So when you go and do your pumpkins, remember they could be any shape, any size, any color. You could do the vines, you don't have to do the vines. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoy your pumpkins. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little something. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for even more up-to-date videos. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day.